Hello, and welcome to the Free Black Girl Podcast. This is a space for joyful healing, learning, and collective liberation. My name is Najma Ahmed, and you are listening to a series of mini podcast episodes called Lessons from Liberation. I shared in my first season of the podcast all the ways in which I got free from unhealed trauma, people pleasing, and really from any person, place, or thing causing me to betray myself. Now, these lessons from liberation are based on what I learned last year after asking myself, now what? I started a blog called The Freedom Pages during that time, and I'm sharing what I reflected on in real time. Last week, I talked about creating our own internal safe space, particularly at a time where everything around us feels unsafe. We are living in the collapse of an empire. But my question to us now is, do we stand and watch the collapse and wait for what comes after? Or will we remember the lessons of our Black women foremothers and come together to birth a new world? Let's jump into this week's lesson from this blog post I wrote back in November. America has been trying to break Black people and Black women for centuries. I watched a couple of episodes of Roots the other night. I know. The world is heavy enough with mass layoffs, manufactured chaos, global genocide, war, and starvation used as a weapon right here in America. But I was scrolling for something to watch on Tubi and it popped up. But man, the level of evilness that has to live inside of a person to do these things to another human being is psychotic. I couldn't even get to the episode when they arrived at the plantation. I tapped out at the auction, seeing white children playing as they inspected the kidnapped Africans like they were cattle. Truly evil. So I turned it off and I was going to head to bed. But every night before bed, I do my nighttime ritual. And so I sit and I meditate, I pray, I talk to the ancestors. And thinking about what I had witnessed while watching Roots that night, it made me cry. To think about what so many of our ancestors had to endure, to think about what they did to our ancestors, what they done to us because it lives in our bodies, the centuries of torture and torment, the rape, the brutality, the state-sanctioned terrorism. That pain doesn't just go away. But what really made me cry was the realization that I am here because they survived. They survived because they knew better was possible one day. That same courage and determination that also lives in our bodies. We are the descendants of the ones who persisted. Whether here in America, in the Caribbean, or across the diaspora, they persisted through unimaginable circumstances. We must persist now. We can and we will. As I meditated, I realized this is why I'm called into liberation work. We have to heal these generational wounds that keep us in mental, emotional, and spiritual bondage. Our ancestors did the first step, liberation from a physical bondage that was so deeply entrenched that it took 400 years to get free from. Now, are we willing to do our part, to go the rest of the way? We have to keep healing, keep dreaming, and keep building. We have to help each other get free. I've created something that I believe will help us to do just that. The Unbought Unbossed Academy, a school for space holders and world builders. The Academy is a place for Black women to bring our brilliance in-house and work together to build our new world. I have an amazing team of Black women therapists, wellness providers, marketing experts, web designers, coaches, and strategists ready to go. I've already supported over 50 Black women as they have started or expanded their businesses. Every participant in the Academy will attend a healing retreat. They'll have 6 months of one-on-one coaching, group coaching. They'll get a custom website, marketing, scaling strategy, and build digital infrastructure and so much more. But this Unbought Unbossed Academy, the mission behind it is more than just starting businesses. It's more than just a business incubator. This is about building a new society for us and by us. I'll be working with those who wish to create what we need to not only survive the collapse, but to build what comes after. In my own journey of liberation and in my work as a liberation coach, I've found that as we move toward collective liberation, we experience 4 phases. We begin with healing, going within, resting, tending to our personal and generational wounds, being still. Then through that stillness, we begin to seeking understanding of who we are. what brings us joy, and how we can bring those passions that have lived deep inside of us to the surface. Then we begin to build, putting structure behind our dreams, manifesting them into reality, and doing it in community. We can't do anything alone, not in a sustainable way. After we've put structure to it, after it has been made manifest, to reach true liberation, we have to step into the light. That's why I talk about it so much. We become amplifiers of this message of how we got through, of how we reclaimed our light, so that others may have permission and they can see themselves in the journey. And then they enter with us into this cycle of liberation, and they begin their own healing, their own seeking, their own building and amplifying, and on and on and on. Black women, I need you to hear me. It is time to Captain Planet this thing with our powers combined. Our foremothers are calling. They left us a trail. They left us instructions. Black women have been building worlds since the birth of humanity came from a Black woman. I woke up the other day and I heard the words, when and where we enter, when and where we enter. And I'm like, okay, I know that's the name of a book. I read it probably 20 years ago in my sociology class in college. So I got out of the bed. I pulled up my library app. Shout out to public libraries. Make sure you get your library card for a moment such as this. But I downloaded the book and I started to read the preface, and it just hit me like a lightning bolt. And so I'm going to share the full preface with you. When and Where I Enter, The Impact of Black Women on Race and Sex in America by Paula Giddings. A History of Our Own. The occasion of a new edition of When and Where I Enter, first published in 1984, has made me think about the uses of history in different periods. How we plumb the past for inspiration, for evidence of things seen but unacknowledged. During segregation, we celebrated our contributions to civilization, or in other words, our ability to land on our feet after being thrown from great heights. In the 60s and 70s, we embraced our resistance and agency, and in the 80s, we uncovered our canonical presence in the full scheme of American history and culture, high and low. An indomitable belief in the continuing progress of each succeeding generation was like a brightly colored thread woven throughout the record of our experience. This, of course, is a very American notion, but for Black women, many of whom, like myself, are inscribed with the image of a great-great-great-grandmother who, though born enslaved, was able, when the time came, to turn a raised head toward freedom, or of a grandmother who trekked north and with savings from domestic work sent my mother to college. This belief was an extraordinary article of faith. Surely it was at the heart of the economic, social, and political convictions that drove the women's and Black rights movements of the 60s and 70s. In an important way, that faith was borne out in the 80s and 90s for African Americans in general, and women in particular. In that period, the voice of Black women, the living narrative of our experience, not only emerged, but began to define the literature, arts, and scholarship that were informed by it. In another measure of progress, access was gained to newly desegregated institutions and occupations to the extent that, though still earning less than all men, including Black men, we have reached parity in some instances and surpassed the earnings of white women. There have been other gains. Black women elected officials, for example, including the first Black woman elected a United States senator. But a new cycle has eclipsed the old, and these gains are no longer seen or felt in the context of the societal movement optimism of the last 3 decades. One of the reasons is increasing Black poverty, especially of female-headed households. Another is the onset of an anti-labor economy. A third, and most defining, is an at first predictable conservative reaction that turned into a crimson backlash of considerable ferocity. In its midst, although reactionaries were unable to undermine the social movement ideals of equality and opportunity for all, they nonetheless managed to reinterpret the meaning and valiance of those principles as they applied to people of color, to the poor, and to women. In this way, they twisted welfare safety nets into nooses, made the level playing field of affirmative action into reverse discrimination. recast poverty as a function of morality rather than that of economic policy. As for feminism, they charged that it didn't save women's lives, but ruined them and family and daddy too. If the counter tide had come from just one direction, it would not have been so brutal. But it also included conservative elements of the Black community as well, particularly regarding the achievements of women. This is at variance with the abiding faith of our progress, our legacy as agents of change, even our survival. When I think about how torn and ambivalent Black women become in the face of such developments, it leads me to think that in this new era, we must search history for a new element, something that in a way is less familiar to us, ourselves. For I think even when we possess a breathtaking sense of agency, when we have heroically resisted, when we have proven our worth in the wealth of our presence, we have seen ourselves primarily in the context of others, of men, of community, of family, of employers. This has made us indispensable. Toni Morrison says, those who don't know our history don't know their own. But that idea has also pulled us back against our own interests when our winds should be pushing us in another direction. So we become indispensable to everyone but ourselves. In the 90s and beyond, we might ask then, who are we as ourselves? What would we say to Anita Hill outside the earshot of whites or men or our mothers and fathers? What do we feel about a Million Man March, notwithstanding the participation of our sons and brothers and husbands? Who are we when no one yearns for us, or when we are in full possession of our sexuality? Who are we when we are not someone's mother or daughter or sister or aunt or church elder or first Black woman to be this or that? In the next century, we should search our history for the answers to these questions, which I believe will evoke the extraordinary will, spirit, and transformative vision that can reconnect us to loved ones, community, and reform movements in revolutionary ways. For what I have learned in the 80s and 90s is that the faith in progress our forebears taught was not only in terms of our status in society, but in our ability to gain increasing control of our own lives. This was written by Paula Giddings nearly 40 years ago, but it could have been written today. There's so many of us building amazing programs, infrastructure, community, and worlds. There's so many of us holding space for others. But who holds space for the space holders? Who builds worlds for the world builders? That's what I'm doing. And you can join me on April 21st at 6 p.m. for a virtual event, Building Our New World with Love Over Fear. I want you to ask yourself, what world are you imagining? How will your work contribute to that new world? What are you afraid of when you think about building your vision? But what do you love more than you fear? We know this world is dying. The collapse is here. Many of us have seen it coming for years now. But the thing about a collapse, there are no rules anymore. We get to do what we know in our bones, in our spirit, in our blood. In moment of honesty, the most terrifying part of this for me is knowing that I want this next cohort of the Academy to be free of cost. I don't want Black women to pay for one more thing. But I also know that the cost of running this Academy is real. Executing my vision is about $10,000 per participant. I had to ask myself, is it fear of not thinking people will be able to pay me that makes me want it to be free? And I've been told not to focus on women who've been laid off, to focus on women who have the money. But it never sat right in my spirit because, yes, I know people will pay for this. Yes, I know that I can find those who are willing and ready to do so. But what does that say about who gets to shape our new world? Money cannot be a barrier to this. That's how we got into this situation in the first place. Who gets a seat at the table? When I was reading When and Where I Enter, it was talking about Ida B. Wells. and how she wanted to create and she just didn't have the funds, but she just kept going. She kept writing, she kept investigating, she kept organizing. And Black women rallied around her, those who had the wealth and who had the means, and they made it happen. Listen, I've applied to grants, I've looked at sponsorships, but if I'm honest, I don't want their hands on this. I ask myself, who's really going to fund the revolution led by Black women? Target? I don't want to change the language as I've been advised by some people. I don't want to soften my vision as has been suggested. I started a crowdfunding link last year and I got some support, and I'm eternally grateful for that. But I got discouraged as well. I think my fear took over and I just kind of stopped talking about it. But I also know that I needed to learn some more and to experience some more. And so I'm putting it back out there now. So if there is anybody out there who hears my voice, who is truly devoted to building a new world, to supporting Black women, who believes in this mission, and who has the means and the desire, if you know, you know, I'm passing the offering plate around again. I believe so much in what I'm building. I just need your support to be able to really bring it to life for the women who need it, for the women who also believe, who also want to build, who also need your support. We can do this together. Our foremothers did this together. They've left us a blueprint to follow. We are all we got. We are all we need. Thank you for listening. Go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Leave me a comment and a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. I really hope these lessons from liberation help you to grow, as you being in community with me helps me to grow. And as always, I want this to be a conversation. So leave me a comment. What do you think about the Unbought Unbossed Academy? What questions do you have for me? I'll talk to you soon.